Welcome to Refuel with Jennifer Ballou. Join Jennifer for a time to recharge, refresh, and refuel your heart and soul. Here's your host, Jennifer Ballou.
Hey everyone, welcome to Refuel. I am so excited to have you here today. If I can get my brain to cooperate. I have 4 books plus my phone plus a little sticky pad spread out. Oh my Lord. Anyway, there's a lot on my brain today that I want to share with you. Like I said, I hope I can, kind of bring it all together and make it make sense, because y'all know how I like to squirrel chase sometimes. So anyway, we just had our worship night on October the 9th, and it was so good. I really hope y'all can make the next one if you are in the Palestine, Texas area. The next one will be November 20th, so put that in your calendars. Anyway, in the midst of that night, God was showing me something about worship that I just was like, I really want to share this. And I know it's, later on in the month, but I still think it's a really important thing to look at. So here we go. Let's see if my brain will mesh all this together and not be like a big old bowl of spaghetti. So a lot of the times I think, we have like 2 different versions of worship. And honestly, I think they're both correct. A lot of the times when we say worship, it's more of an atmosphere like we had with the worship night, where our intent is to really, hone in and focus on God together in that moment. We use movement, we use music, we use, the word, just all those different things to really, get into this place of really communing with God. And that is absolutely 100% worship. The one I think we don't think of very often is just in our day-to-day lives. And that's kind of where I'm coming from today, but it's going to be kind of a roundabout way, because I think they're both, especially for me, it's a very, my day-to-day life, I do a lot of movement and speaking. Even in my job at the boutique, God is very prevalent in that and in that place. And I think people know that even when they're coming in. That's that's already struggling, and we're just 3 minutes into this. So that makes it a little bit easier for me that those 2 different things, that day to day and the movement and that type of thing, kind of merge a lot together for me. But for a lot of people, it does not. So what are some different ways we can really stop and think about worship, and how that looks? And there is a reason I'm saying all this, because I want to get to something else that I think will really help us step into this new season with a lot more authority, with some understanding, and kind of where we as a people need to be as believers. So that's where I am right now. Hopefully y'all will let me know if you are getting there too, or if you see that, just anyway. So really, worship is a posture. It's a heart posture. There's some different things I've written down about worship that help us kind of understand as a definition what worship is. And it says, worship is to honor with extravagant love and submission that which is preeminent in your life. And that word preeminent means having paramount rank, dignity, importance, outstanding, supreme, truly outstanding, better than everyone else, and of greatest importance. So that which is of the greatest importance in our lives, to honor with extravagant love and submission. That's one way of looking at worship. Another, where is it? This comes from a book. I can't even remember the book right now, but it says the Unquenchable Worshiper, woo, is from a heart so amazed by God and his wonders, burns a love that will not be extinguished. It survives any situation and lives through any circumstance. It will not allow itself to be quenched, for that would heap insult on the love it lives in response to. So that goes right back to the one we just read, to honor with extravagant love and submission that which is preeminent in our life. So an unquenchable worshiper, it has that same unquenchable, that love, that extravagant love in its heart. When we worship the source of our healing, of our provision, of our salvation, any of those things that we think of when we think of God. We worship the source. And we also declare the truth of what God has already completed, and our hearts are infused with hope. So that's, that I think for me, that just gives me another look at worship. And here's one more. It says, worship occurs when y'all, too many W's and Q's and things. Worship occurs when we release the depth of our being through devotion and allegiance to something we revere more than ourselves. Worship is esteeming a thing or a person more highly than everything else and giving it your utmost attention and adoration. I don't know how many different books that is pulled from, but, all saying the same thing. And it really is a posture. It doesn't have anything to do with being in a building, being, in a church building. It doesn't have anything to do, with standing with other believers or, something you do in your prayer closet or in your quiet time. It is absolutely a posture of the heart, and it can occur all day long because it is, to honor with extravagant love and submission that which is preeminent in our lives. So that's really where we need to look, is what is preeminent in our lives, and are we worshiping where we are? Because like I said just a minute ago, it's hard to see ourselves as being in a moment of worship when we're not in a specific place or in a specific time dedicated for that. But we have to start seeing ourselves in worship wherever we are. I mean, you can be at the high school football game screaming your head off, or, in the middle of your classroom teaching students, or at Walmart, either checking someone out as the cashier or as the person buying your groceries or whatever. We have to start seeing ourselves in worship everywhere we are, because when we do that, we become we become influencers. And I know you know what that word means, because it is such a huge part of our culture now. these influencers on social media and Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, you name it. And they really do influence what we're looking at and buying and all those things. But we have that ability as well as worshipers to be influences in any place that we are. That we bring God into that place and into that atmosphere, and then his atmosphere can begin to permeate the atmosphere that we are in. So, how do we do that? Well, we just go out. We have a worship attitude. We just are constantly loving God and expressing who is preeminent in our life. And so if people see God as preeminent in our life, our voice reflects that, our conduct reflects that. People will be drawn to that, and people need that right now. So that is, something to really look at. For me, it's something to really look at. I think for all of us, that is something to really look at. The fact that we need to be in a place where we don't just see ourselves worshiping when we go to church on Wednesdays and Sundays or special events, that we see it as something that we are doing every single day, everywhere we go. In all circumstances, in all situations. Okay, so bear with me here because we're fixing to jump into something else and then tie it back together. I've been studying worship and looking at worship, especially as far as movement goes and different things like that, are a little bit outside of the ordinary. For 20 years now or more. And so there's a lot of things that I know, but kind of forget. I think that's true for all of us about a lot of different things. There's, especially if you've been a believer since you were little, young, there's things but things you don't. God reveals to us in different ways, in different times. And it becomes just, we can see it differently. Gosh, I hope that makes sense. Anyway, so as I was preparing for our worship night, I wrote down some, pulled out all of my old notes and just started rewriting them into one little book so I could just have worship stuff all together and just flip through it and find what I need. And he took me back to some notes, and I've rewritten them. I've read them again and again, and that's where I have books everywhere right now out about Satan or Lucifer, which Lucifer meant light bearer. He was an archangel, which meant he had legions of angels under him that were created just like him. And so I'm going to read to you a passage in Ezekiel, if I can get my scriptures back up here. And this is Ezekiel 28. And I'm just going to read, I think this is 11 through 19, something like that. This is from the Message, so it's a little bit, a little bit easier to listen to and hear, without all the extra words. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, he's talking about Lucifer in this. And it says, "You had everything going for you. You were in Eden, God's garden. You were dressed in splendor, your robe studded with jewels. Carnelian, peridot, and moonstone, beryl, onyx, and jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and emerald, all in settings of engraved gold. Can y'all imagine a robe like that? All those jewels, that's his entire wardrobe. A robe was prepared for you the same day you were created. You were the anointed cherub. I placed you on the mountain of God. You strolled in magnificence among the stones of fire. From the day of your creation, you were sheer perfection, and then imperfection. Evil was detected in you. In much buying and selling, you turned violent. You sinned. I threw you, disgraced, off the mountain of God. I threw you out, you the anointed angel cherub. No more strolling among the gems of fire for you. Your beauty went to your head. You corrupted wisdom by using it to get worldly fame. I threw you to the ground, sent you sprawling before an audience of kings, and let them gloat over your demise. And so on and so forth. So, telling you all of that. And you can also read in Isaiah 14 more about the fall of Lucifer. But this is what I really want you to hear. Lucifer was the worship leader. I mean, he was covered in gemstones, and every time he moved, and there is more scripture and a lot, like y'all don't want to listen to me talk that long, that I could get to you, but like every move he made music, and sent light out, and he was the worship leader. That was his place, but he decided that he would, in his beauty, would rather people worship him than God. Okay? So when he threw out Lucifer, his legion of angels went with him. And that was a third of heaven. Okay? Stay with me. So that act of worship in heaven as an intimate relationship with God no longer exists because the worship leader was cast out of heaven. Okay? We on earth make up that third. And it's why worship is so important. Because that intimate relationship is no longer there as an act in heaven. We become that. We become those that. I'm having a hard time with the right words, but I hope y'all understand what I'm saying and not saying at the same time. Anyway, moving on. But that is why it is such an important thing, and it is why it is such the arts are so attacked and manipulated, but that's a whole nother story to go into. But as I was reading this and I was thinking about the everyday worship, just that posture of the heart and why it is so important, and that, a lot of the times with the enemy, that's where he comes in, is when we've really made God preeminent and we are in that place of worshiping every day and we have that posture of the heart. He really comes in and attacks us and even blinds us to the fact that we can make that an everyday thing, that it doesn't have to just happen within the church walls or specific deemed times. Because that kind of relationship with God is unlike anything there is. And when we step into that place, God is able to throw us into the gap to stand for his purposes. And we can worship there until those purposes are accomplished. So if there are situations and things that you're going through, and you develop this heart of worship, this in our everyday lives, God can use that. And it's not a heavy thing. It's not a something that we have to fight for. But I feel like the knowing that was lost in heaven, and that, as we were created in his image, that we are the ones that stand in that place, and that gives us an authority that I don't think we know that we have. In 2 Corinthians, let me find it. 2 Corinthians 3:18. It says, we can all draw close to him with the veil removed from our faces, and with no veil we all become like mirrors who brightly reflect the glory of the Lord Jesus. We are being transfigured into his very image as we move from one brighter level of glory to another. And this glorious transfiguration comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. And I feel like that is really this thing of learning to worship in our everyday lives, and why it is so important in this season that we're in as a whole, in this broken and fallen world, that we learn the importance of that posture of worship, the y'all, my notes. That we really learn that place of honor with extravagant love and submission, and putting God preeminent in our lives, and that we allow that transfiguration to happen in the day-to-day, no matter where we are, where we're working, what we're doing, errands, just being a mom, wife, whatever, that we allow God to transform us into his likeness in that area, and that we understand the importance of where that comes from, because that intimate relationship isn't happening anywhere else except here on earth, and it needs to be a day-to-day thing so that God can do the work that he needs to do, because he's, he in his wisdom and all the things that he is, sets his throne of authority on our praises and on that worship. It's in our very nature that we are worshipers. It's not something we do. But it does define who we are. We can't be divided into those who worship and those who don't. Everybody worships. It's just a matter of what or whom. So let's make sure that it is God that we are worshiping, that we are not taking on the attitude of Lucifer, and feeling like our lives are more important, or or allowing Lucifer to blind us and to pervert that heart posture, and to let us shift our focus onto something else as preeminent. That we are making sure that it is God that is preeminent in our lives, and that is who we're worshiping, so that so that heaven can come to earth, that his kingdom atmosphere can envelop the earth, and that those rules and edicts and decrees can go forth. So thank you for joining me this week. I would love to know what you feel about this. Send me an email, refuel. What is my email? Jennifer@refuelwithjennifer.com. Visit the website, leave us a comment on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Let me know how you feel about really understanding the importance of us being the ones that make up that third of heaven that was cast out with Lucifer, and how that maybe changes your thought process on worship and worship in your everyday life. Until next week, guys, I'll see you later. Bye.